So, have you ever noticed how booking a standard vacation lately has basically just become, well, it's like a digital grocery run?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, you push your little virtual cart down the aisle, right? You
Right.
grab a flight to Chicago, just toss it in the basket.
Right.
You wander over to the hotel aisle, pick a reliable Marriott, drop it in. Maybe you add a rental car at the checkout. The whole thing takes, what, 20 minutes?
If that, yeah.
Right. And it's completely linear. You have absolute granular control over every single variable.
It's really the triumph of the early internet. I mean, the
Mm.
travel industry spent the last, 25 years optimizing that exact transaction
Yeah.
to make it totally frictionless.
Exactly. But then, you decide you want to do something bigger. You want to take that bucket list trip. Let's say you want to do 2 weeks in Egypt.
Ooh, Egypt. Yeah, that's a whole different
It
beast.
is because you want to see the pyramids,
Right.
naturally. But you also want a 3-day cruise down the Nile. And you need an internal flight from Cairo down to Aswan.
Right. And you probably want a local guide at the Valley of the Kings who actually, holds a degree in Egyptology.
Yes. And you desperately need a reliable driver waiting for you at the Cairo airport at, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, always at 2 in the morning.
Always. And suddenly, you aren't grocery shopping anymore. You are trying to choreograph a ballet, blindfolded, over the internet.
Yeah, just hoping every single stranger you just wired money to actually shows up.
Right. Which is terrifying.
What's fascinating here is how the friction becomes exponential. Because if just one dancer trips in that ballet, say your internal flight is delayed by 3 hours, meaning you miss the driver, meaning you miss the boat departure, well, the entire 2-week performance collapses, like a house of cards.
Which is exactly what we're unpacking today. So, welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at a massive stack of research today, anchored by a really incredible, dense guide.
Yeah, it's a fantastic document.
It really is. It was put together by Yvonne Jr. Blanchette at ARA Voyages. And Yvonne has basically handed us the blueprints to this company called Exoticca.
Right, based in Barcelona.
Exactly. They are a travel technology company that looked at this terrifying, complex, multi-day international tour market.
The house of cards.
The House of Cards, yeah. And they decided to completely digitize it. They are trying to make buying a 14-day expedition across the globe as easy as buying a pair of sneakers.
And the stakes here are just fascinating because this is kind of the final frontier of travel tech. As we were just saying, booking a weekend in London is a solved problem.
Totally.
But piecing together a multi-city expedition across a continent where you don't speak the language, that segment of the market has somehow remained stubbornly trapped in the 1990s.
It really has.
I mean, until very recently, if you wanted to do this without losing your mind, you were looking at glossy paper brochures and, waiting a week for a travel agent to call you back with a quote.
So let's actually unpack this. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone trying to build this Egypt trip, say, 10 years ago. What was the actual mechanical process happening behind the scenes when I walked into a brick-and-mortar travel agency?
Oh, it was a massive, fragmented supply chain nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell the agent you want to go to Egypt.
Okay.
That agent doesn't actually have a direct line to a bus driver in Cairo.
Yeah, of course not.
So they have to call a flight consolidator in New York to negotiate group airfare.
Okay.
Then they send a fax, and yes, literally a fax to a wholesaler in Europe. Then they email a local ground operator in North Africa to arrange the guide and the van.
Wow.
They have to manually compile all of these moving, incredibly volatile parts.
Right.
Then they add in their commission, wait for all the parties to confirm, and then finally present you with a paper itinerary.
And by the time they print that paper, the flight prices have probably changed, right?
Oh, absolutely. So the quote is already outdated the second they hand it to you.
No, it's just a completely static solution to a highly dynamic problem.
Precisely. At Exotica looked at that archaic multi-week negotiation and basically decided to build a technology engine to collapse that entire supply chain.
Into a single transaction.
A single real-time transaction, yes.
Which, I mean, that makes me wonder how a logistical knot that tangled even begins to get unraveled, because building a website is easy, right? Anyone can do that.
Sure.
But integrating the global travel supply chain is something else entirely. And the source material takes us back to 2013 to an entrepreneur in Spain named Jesus Rodriguez Fernandez.
Right, Fernandez was really the catalyst here. He looked around the landscape in 2013 and saw this glaring anomaly.
What kind of anomaly?
Well, you had Uber totally redefining local transport. You had Airbnb ripping up the rulebook for lodging. Consumers were being trained to expect instant, mobile, transparent bookings for almost everything.
Right, you just tap a button.
It's exactly. Yet, the most expensive, most complex travel purchases were completely opaque.
Yeah.
You couldn't just add a Peruvian expedition to a digital card, see the final price, and hit checkout. So Fernandez planted the flag for digitizing the package tour.
But having the idea and actually building the architecture to execute it, those are two very different things.
Ooh, worlds apart.
And this is where the story takes a really wild turn. Because 2 years later, in 2015, they bring in a new CEO named Per Velez. And I was reading his background in the dossier, and I had to do a double take.
Yeah, it's not what you'd expect.
Not at all. He didn't come from Marriott. He didn't come from Delta.
No, his background is perhaps the most crucial element of their entire success. Velez came from deep tech. Specifically, he was the CEO of Seattle, which is a global election software company.
Election software.
Yeah, and before that, he was a CFO in the telecommunications sector.
That is such a specific, intense environment. I mean, when you were building software to run national elections, you weren't worried about thread counts on hotel sheets.
Not at all.
You are building systems that demand zero-fail logistics, extreme cryptographic security, and the ability to process millions of data points in real time without the servers melting down.
And that is exactly the mindset you need to fix a broken supply chain. Velez didn't view a 14-day tour to Japan as a hospitality challenge.
How did he view it?
He viewed it strictly as a data integration problem. He asked, how do we pull real-time API feeds from global airlines, massive hotel aggregators, and small local bus companies and force them to talk to each other in milliseconds?
Wow. So treating travel like a telecom network.
Exactly. When you inject a telecommunications and deep tech brain into a legacy hospitality space, you completely change the ceiling of what is possible.
And the numbers back that up in a truly absurd way. I mean, when Velez took the reins in 2015, Exoticca was doing about 2 million euros in annual sales, which is fine.
It's a start.
But fast forward to 2023, and they're hitting 200 million euros.
Yeah.
That is a 100x revenue multiplier in less than a decade. They went from a small team of 50 to over 500 employees.
They also executed a massive geographic pivot during that time. They started in Spain, obviously, and expanded through Europe, the UK, France, Germany. But the true rocket fuel was North America.
Right.
Today, 75% of Exoticca's business originates in the U.S.
Which creates this really interesting geographic arbitrage, right? Because the guide noted that they are looking at moving more of their executive presence to Miami.
Right, to be closer to their primary market.
But they are keeping their engineering core in Barcelona because the tech talent there costs a fraction of what it would cost to build this in Silicon Valley.
It's a very smart play.
So they have European operational costs, but they are capturing this massive, highly lucrative American affluent traveler market.
And the broader financial markets have clearly recognized the genius of that structure. I mean, they aren't a scrappy startup anymore.
Yeah.
In July 2024, they closed a 60 million euro Series D round,
Which is huge.
led by Quadrille Capital. And then, just months later, in early 2025, they locked in a 25 million euro venture debt facility from BBVA Spark.
Pushing them well past the $100 million funding mark.
Yeah.
And the validation just keeps coming. This year, in 2026, they were tapped for Endeavor's Outliers class.
That's a huge deal.
For those listening who might not follow venture capital, Endeavor screens thousands of high-growth companies globally. Making the Outliers list means you are in the top 10% of their entire network. Exoticca was one of only 13 companies selected from Spain.
They are a heavy-hitting, highly validated enterprise at this point. And yet, Velez frames their mission in a way that sounds almost strangely traditional.
Yeah, he constantly references Thomas Cook, right?
Exactly. Thomas Cook, the man who essentially invented the package tour back in the 19th century. Velez argues that the package tour hasn't fundamentally evolved since Cook's time, and Exoticca is just bringing it into the digital age.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Do it. If the underlying product is still a group of people getting on a bus to go look at a monument, is this actually a revolution? Or is it just the travel equivalent of putting a shiny new app interface over the exact same group tour my grandparents took to Italy in 1988?
It's a really vital distinction to make, because if you only look at the front-end experience, the physical act of sitting on the bus,
Yeah.
you might totally think it's just a new coat of paint.
Right, a bus is a bus.
But the revolution is entirely in the back-end mechanics. It's about how the trip is assembled, priced, and distributed.
So walk me through how those back-end mechanics actually change things for you, the person sitting on your couch trying to book a vacation.
It fundamentally changes your purchasing power because Exotica has automated that horrific fragmented supply chain we talked about earlier. They don't have to pay a retail travel agent a 15% commission.
Oh,
They
okay.
don't have to pay a wholesale consolidator a 10% markup.
Mm-hmm.
By building direct digital pipelines to the end suppliers, they strip out an enormous amount of middleman friction.
Which means to scale from 2 million to 200 million, they had to undergo a massive identity shift. They couldn't just be a travel agency with a slick website.
No, not at all.
They had to figure out exactly what kind of machine they were building in Barcelona.
And Yvonne's guide does a masterful job of breaking down this identity crisis because the travel industry is notoriously murky with its terminology.
Well, for sure, everyone calls themselves a platform or an operator.
Right. So the guide starts by defining Exotica by what it is absolutely not.
Which I found so helpful. So first off, they are not a traditional tour operator like, say, a Gate 1 Travel or a G Adventures.
Correct. When you book with a legacy operator, you frequently get off the plane and there's a bus waiting there with the company's logo painted on the side.
Right.
The driver works for them. The guide is wearing a branded polo shirt and is directly on their payroll. But Exotica operates on a strictly asset-light model.
Asset light.
Yeah, they do not own a single tour bus. They do not have local guides on their payroll in Peru or Japan.
Okay, so they don't own the ground game. But they also aren't a marketplace like an Expedia or a Kayak.
No, they are not.
Because if I go to an online travel agency, I can search for a Delta flight, decide it's too expensive, swap it for a United flight, pick a Hilton, change my mind, and grab an Airbnb. The power to mix and match competing suppliers is totally in my hands.
And Exotica does not let you do that.
Right. So if they aren't employing the guides and they aren't an open marketplace, what is their actual function?
The most accurate way to conceptualize Exotica is as an in-house itinerary designer and bulk bundler.
So it's essentially the Costco model applied to bucket list travel.
Yes, that is a brilliant way to look at it.
Think about it. The team in Barcelona acts as the buyers. They sit in a room and say, we are going to design the ultimate 10-day loop of South Africa. And they map out the route.
Right.
Then, because they are moving tens of thousands of passengers a year, they go to the airlines, the hotel chains, and the local ground operators in Cape Town, and they say, we want to buy a massive block of inventory for this specific route.
They negotiate aggressive, bulk rate discounts.
Exactly. Discounts that a single consumer trying to book a honeymoon could never, ever secure.
Never.
So they take all those discounted, bulk bought pieces, repackage them into a beautiful digital box, slap a fixed price on it, and sell it directly to you. You can't change the ingredients in the box, but you get the volume discount.
And that volume discount is the core of their entire value proposition. The guide notes that because of this bulk bundling and the total elimination of retail commissions, Exotica can undercut the cost of booking those exact same components independently by up to 30%.
30%. I mean, that isn't just saving a few bucks on baggage fees.
No, it's substantial.
If you are pricing out a $6,000 expedition to the Galapagos, saving 30% means keeping nearly $2,000 in your pocket. That is a completely different tier of financial incentive.
It is undeniable leverage. But, and this is the massive caveat to the asset-light model, it only works if the local partners they contract with actually deliver on the ground. Exotica can design a perfect itinerary in Spain, but they are entirely reliant on a third-party company in Cairo to make sure the bus air conditioning actually works and the guide is engaging.
Which seems like an incredible vulnerability. I'm handing my money to a tech company in Europe, but my actual physical safety and enjoyment are being outsourced to a subcontractor in a country I've never been to. How do they control for quality when they don't own the assets?
They apply a very rigid vetting framework. According to the source, any local ground operator wanting a contract with Exotica must maintain a minimum 3.5-star rating on public review platforms like TripAdvisor.
Okay, so there's a baseline.
Furthermore, at least 65% of their historical reviews must categorize them as excellent or very good. It's a purely data-driven quality floor.
But numbers can only tell you so much.
Right, which is why, beyond the digital metrics, Exotica actually deploys their own internal staff to physically travel and test every single new itinerary before it goes live on the platform.
Oh, wow. So they do run physical quality assurance, but I want to pause here and think about the human element. Because the data shows their target demographic is middle to upper middle class travelers.
Yeah.
This is someone who has the disposable income to fly to Southeast Asia. but they have zero desire to spend their evenings cross-referencing ferry schedules in Thai or worrying about currency conversions for taxi drivers.
They want the logistics abstracted away.
Exactly. But by outsourcing the physical experience, aren't we introducing a massive variable? I mean, Exotica software doesn't get a flat tire,
No, it doesn't.
but a local contractor's van does.
Oh.
A local guide might be going through a bad breakup and give a terrible, unenthusiastic tour of a temple you flew 20 hours to see.
And you've identified the inherent tension at the heart of their business. The asset-light approach is the only reason they could scale to 50 destinations globally in just a few years.
Right, buying fleets of buses on 5 continents is a capital nightmare.
But the trade-off is surrendering total environmental control. The quality of your Wednesday afternoon in the Sacred Valley of the Incas is entirely dependent on the specific human being guiding you that day. No amount of elegant code in Barcelona can fix a grumpy tour guide in the moment.
Which leads me to a really big question. If the hotels are properties I could theoretically book myself, and the ground experience is run by local subcontractors, what is Exotica's actual defensible moat? What prevents someone else from just copying the itinerary? It has to come back to the tech. How are they actually guaranteeing that 30% saving on the back end?
To understand the moat, we have to look at the engine powering the whole ecosystem. And that brings us to their proprietary artificial intelligence platform, which they named SmartFare.
SmartFare, they launched this publicly in June 2025, right?
Yes. And the metrics on what the system is doing are, frankly, difficult to wrap your head around.
Hit me with the numbers.
SmartFare processes 6.5 million individual flight options. And that's not per month. That's daily.
Daily. I just want to sit with that. It is evaluating 6.5 million routing combinations every 24 hours. That is solving the traveling salesman problem on a global scale.
Exactly. And it's crucial to understand how it's evaluating them, because it's not just running a script to find the cheapest dollar amount.
Right, because if you do that, you end up with a 50-hour travel day.
If you just search for the absolute lowest fare, you end up with horrific itineraries. So SmartFare is calculating a complex, multidimensional matrix. It looks at the base price, yes, but it also evaluates the total journey duration. It looks at the number of layovers.
Okay.
And most impressively, it calculates what they call connection risk.
Wait, how does an algorithm calculate connection risk?
It looks at historical data across the global distribution systems. So the massive networks that airlines use to share inventory. So if a flight paths you through Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris with a 45-minute layover...
Good luck with that.
Right. The algorithm knows, mathematically, that the odds of you making that connection and your luggage making that connection are incredibly low.
So it just tosses it out.
It will actively filter out that routing, even if it's the cheapest option, because the cost of you missing the flight and ruining the first day of the tour is too high.
That is fascinating. The source also mentions it actively optimizes to prevent wasted hotel nights.
Right. Imagine SmartFare finds a flight that saves the bundle $80. But that flight lands in Tokyo at 3 in the morning.
Oh, I hate that.
Right, because that means you're arriving at a hotel, paying for a full night's stay, just to sleep for 3 hours before the morning excursion begins. The algorithm weighs the $80 flight saving against the $200 cost of a mathematically useless hotel night, determines it's a net loss for the bundle's value, and selects a flight that arrives at 4 in the afternoon instead.
It is hyperlogical packing.
Exactly.
And the speed at which it operates is insane. The guide details how the system behaves during peak demand windows. Think about Black Friday, or the massive travel booking rush that happens every January.
Oh yeah, the stress test.
While human travel agents are drowning in emails, SmartFare is stress testing its own itineraries. It can generate over 1,000 entirely new, fully priced trip configurations in a single day, constantly adjusting to real-time fluctuations in global airline pricing.
It's a continuous algorithmic repackaging. And this computational power is what allows Exotica to offer something that sounds terrifying for a travel company: a best price guarantee.
Which is a bold claim.
They publicly state that if you book a trip and within 24 hours you find a lower price for a comparable itinerary, they will match it. They are betting the house that their algorithm has found the absolute mathematical floor of that specific supply chain bundle.
Okay, but as a consumer, I am looking at the SmartFare matrix, optimizing for price, layover risk, hotel timing, and I am realizing something.
What's that?
It is prioritizing the bundle's logic over my personal preferences. Yes.
Like, if I am a devout Delta flyer, I have medallion status, I want my Sky Miles, and I strictly prefer sitting in an aisle seat.
You're out of luck.
Right. Because if SmartFare does the math and decides that putting me on Turkish Airlines saves the total package $300, I am flying Turkish Airlines. I have to surrender my granular control to the machine.
You've perfectly articulated the psychological toll of this model. The 30% discount requires total submission to the algorithm. Exotica is selling you the destination, the dates, and the price point. They are not selling you a specific airline carrier.
Right.
In fact, your exact flight details, the carrier, the routing, the seat options, are often not confirmed until a few weeks before you depart. For a Type A traveler who needs to know exactly what seat they are in 6 months in advance, this model will induce a panic attack.
Absolutely. And what about that best price guarantee? It makes for a great billboard, but how practical is it really? The guide is very clear-eyed about this. It calls the guarantee narrowly applicable. Is it technically real? Yes. But think about the burden of proof placed on the consumer.
I mean, how would I even prove it?
Exactly. To trigger the guarantee, you have to find a true like-for-like bundled comparison. Exotica has bulk negotiated proprietary hotel rates, specific transfer contracts, and algorithmic group flights. The odds of you, sitting at your kitchen table, manually assembling the exact same apples-to-apples components to prove them wrong within 24 hours are virtually zero.
Wow. So it functions brilliantly as a psychological safety net to get you to click buy, but the house rarely has to actually pay out.
Exactly. It's perceived value.
It's like playing poker against a supercomputer. You might feel good about your hand, but it has already modeled 14 million outcomes. But here's where we have to pivot.
Okay.
The cloud computing and the algorithms are amazing for getting you a cheap ticket, but humans don't sleep in algorithms.
We do not.
We sleep in physical beds. We deal with real weather and real traffic. So I want to transition from the digital booking experience to the reality on the ground. When the plane lands, where are we actually sleeping?
That is a critical transition. The physical lodging structure is highly systematized. Exotica offers 3 distinct hotel categories that act as the foundational building blocks for almost every itinerary.
And the entry point is the charm category. Let's define what that actually means in the real world.
CARM is the budget-conscious foundation. It equates to a solid, functional 3-star international standard. The properties are clean, they are secure, and they meet that minimum 3.5-star review threshold we discussed earlier.
But you aren't getting luxury.
No, you aren't getting a sweeping view of the city, and the breakfast buffet will be fairly basic. The tier is for the traveler who views a hotel strictly as a utilitarian place to shower and recharge, prioritizing their budget for experiences out in the city.
Right.
When you see an aggressively low, jaw-dropping price on an Exotica Facebook ad, you are looking at the charm pricing.
So if you want a bit more comfort, you move up to the superior category.
Superior steps you up into the 4-star equivalent space. The rooms are larger, the locations might be slightly more central, the amenities are upgraded, and the service is more polished.
And how much more does that cost?
The guide points out that upgrading a 2-week trip from Charm to Superior usually only adds a few $100s to the total price tag. From a value perspective, it's really the sweet spot for the majority of travelers.
And finally, you have the luxury tier.
Luxury pushes into the 4.5 to 5-star realm. These are elegant properties, comprehensive resort facilities, high-end dining on-site. It's the absolute ceiling of quality available within their curated system.
But there is a massive operational catch to how these hotels are assigned, right? Because the source material details something called the 30-day rule.
Ah, yes, the 30-day rule. This is another area where the traveler must surrender control.
How so?
If you book an expedition to Morocco 8 months in advance and you select the superior tier, you are not buying a specific room at a specific named hotel.
I'm not.
No, you are buying the promise of the category. Exotica does not confirm the actual physical properties you will be sleeping in until roughly 30 days before departure.
Wow, so I can't look up my hotel on Google Street View for 7 months.
Exactly. And even after they give you the name at the 30-day mark, substitutions are written into the contract. If that specific hotel has a boiler issue or they overbook a conference, Exotica's local partner will simply swap you to another property that meets the same superior category standards.
Again, for the meticulous planner who spends hours reading reviews about the water pressure in boutique hotels, this is a total nightmare. But logistically, it allows Exotica incredible flexibility.
It does.
Now, as I was reading through the guide, I hit upon a logistical detail that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. It concerns how these tiers physically operate on the tour itself. Tell me about the same bus dynamic.
Oh, this is one of the most fascinating operational quirks of the entire company.
Let's hear it.
Because you have travelers choosing between charm, superior, and luxury, you might assume Exotica runs 3 different tours.
Right, a luxury tour and a budget tour.
But they do not.
Mm-hmm.
Often, travelers from different tiers are booked onto the exact same itinerary, riding on the exact same tour bus during the day.
Meaning, what happens at the end of the day?
The bus becomes a delivery vehicle.
Oh, no.
The guide wraps up the afternoon tour at the Acropolis, let's say, and the bus pulls up to a functional 3-star property to drop off the charm travelers.
Okay.
Then it drives across town to drop the superior guests at their hotel. And finally, it pulls into a 5-star resort to drop off the luxury guests. And the next morning, it has to run that exact road in reverse to pick everyone up.
Let's really think about how that feels. You spend 8 hours a day with this group. You bond, you share meals, you make friends, and then every evening there is a highly visible logistical sorting of the group based on economic class.
Yeah.
That has to create a slightly awkward social dynamic.
It absolutely does introduce a visible economic stratification into the vacation. It's unavoidable. However, if we view this strictly through the lens of business strategy, it is an absolute masterstroke of capacity management.
Explain that. Why go through the headache of 3 hotel pickups? It sounds awful.
Traditional operators usually force a demographic choice. They offer a budget tour, and they offer a luxury tour. If the budget tour only gets 8 bookings, but the minimum required to pay the driver is 12, they have to cancel the tour and refund the money.
Oh, I see.
Exotica solves this by aggregating demand. They say, we don't care if you are a backpacker with a bit of extra cash or a wealthy retiree, get on the same bus. By combining the tiers, they virtually guarantee the tour hits the minimum passenger threshold.
So the bus always runs?
The bus always runs. They drastically reduce their cancellation rates while simultaneously capturing the absolute maximum margin from the traveler willing to pay for the 5-star upgrade. It is brilliant yield management.
That makes total sense. They are optimizing for the bus seat, not the bed. Now, navigating all of this, the varying hotels, the pickups, the daily schedules, requires communication. Exotica provides a proprietary traveler's app, and the guide emphasizes that this isn't just a static PDF itinerary you download.
No, the app is the digital tether for the entire experience. It houses your day-by-day routing, your live vouchers, your flight updates. But the true killer feature, the thing that actually saves vacations, is the 24/7 multilingual direct messaging support.
I can see why that's crucial.
Anyone who has traveled internationally knows the absolute sinking feeling of a logistical failure in a foreign environment.
Oh, the worst.
You are standing outside a train station in Kyoto at 7 in the morning. It's pouring rain. Your local guide was supposed to be there 20 minutes ago. You don't speak Japanese, and you don't have a local SIM card to make a phone call.
Nightmare scenario.
If you book this independently, you are completely stranded. With the app, you open a chat interface and message Mission Control in Barcelona in English. A real human being on the other end, who holds the contract with that local Japanese operator, starts making calls on your behalf.
So they fix it for you.
Exactly. It downgrades a crisis into a mere inconvenience.
It's the ultimate safety net. It bridges the gap between the European tech company and the local ground reality.
And speaking of the reality on the ground, what is the actual group experience like? Am I following someone holding a yellow umbrella with 49 other tourists wearing headsets?
Thankfully, no. Exotica leans heavily into small group dynamics. Their average tour runs with about 12 to 15 people, and they strictly cap absolute maximums at 30.
Which fundamentally changes the trip, because a bus of 15 people can navigate the narrow streets of a medieval European city. A coach of 50 people has to park at a massive depot outside of town. Exactly. And they structure these groups into 3 primary formats depending on your comfort level. The first is fully escorted. This is the traditional model where a guide is with you almost continuously, handling every single logistical hurdle. This is highly recommended for complex, high-friction destinations like Egypt or India.
Then you have semi-escorted.
Right, which provides a guided core that get you to the major sites and handle the transfers, but they intentionally build in completely free, unguided days so you can explore independently.
And finally, self-guided, which the guide notes is mostly utilized in their European packages. Exotica handles the painful logistics, the flights, the intercity trains, the hotels. But once you arrive in Paris or Rome, you are entirely on your own for sightseeing. Okay, so we know how the AI builds the trip. We know how the hotels are sorted, we know what the groups look like, but I know exactly what you, the listener, are asking right now. You are doing the mental math. You are wondering, what does this actually cost and where are the hidden fees?
Yet let's follow the money. Because Exotica leads with notoriously aggressive, attention-grabbing pricing. The source guide provides some very realistic baselines for what these trips actually run.
Right. So if we look at their flagship 14-day Egypt itinerary, which includes international flights, domestic flights, the cruise, hotels, and core excursions, you are looking at roughly $1,800 to $2,200 per person.
That's incredibly low.
It is. A comprehensive 2-week tour of Japan runs about $2,500 to $3,500. A massive overland trip through Peru and Ecuador, including the Galapagos Islands, hits between $1,600 and $2,800.
Now, obviously those ranges fluctuate wildly depending on whether you pick the charm or luxury tier, your departure airport, and the time of year.
Yeah.
But those are incredibly disruptive baseline prices for intercontinental travel. And when a consumer sees a 2-week trip to Japan for $2,500, including flights, the immediate skeptical response is always group.
What is the catch? What is not included?
Exactly, which is the right question to ask.
So let's clearly delineate the ledger. Let's start with the inclusions. Round-trip international flights from your home country. Included.
Right.
Domestic internal flights, like bouncing from Lima up to Cusco. Included. All of your hotels for the duration. Included. Every ground transfer between the airport, the hotel, and the train stations. Included. Breakfast every morning at the hotel. Included. And the core guided excursions to the marquee sites. Included.
It looks like a completely closed loop. It feels entirely comprehensive.
Until you look at the exclusions, because the things they leave off the ledger significantly alter the actual cash you need on hand. First off, lunches and dinners are generally not included.
That's a big one.
Optional excursions say a hot air balloon ride at sunrise in Cappadocia are out of pocket. Specific national park entrance fees are excluded. The guide specifically mentions the Galapagos Transit Control Card, which is a $100 cash fee you literally have to hand to a guard when you step off the plane. Exotica does not cover that.
And then there are 2 specific exclusions that can completely warp a traveler's budget if they aren't prepared. The single supplement and the reality of tipping.
Let's talk about the single supplement, because this is a massive pain point in the travel industry. If you are a solo traveler and you want the security of a group, but you demand your own private hotel room, Exotica hits you with a single supplement fee. The source data indicates this is typically a 25 to 40% markup on the base package price.
That is a staggering premium for traveling alone. I mean, if it's a $3,000 trip, you might be paying an extra $1,200 just to not have a roommate.
And then we have gratuities. Tipping is not included in the upfront price, but in many of these destinations, it is not optional. It is an absolute cultural and economic requirement.
Right. You can't just skip it.
The source guide suggests a baseline budget of $100 to $150 per person per week, strictly for tips. You are expected to hand the guide $10 to $15 a day, and the bus driver $5 to $10 a day.
Which means a couple traveling for 2 weeks needs to show up at the airport with an envelope containing $600 in crisp, small denomination cash just to handle gratuities.
So let me push back on their entire marketing premise for a second.
Sure.
If I am buying what is heavily advertised as an inclusive package deal, but I still have to pay a 40% penalty if I travel solo, I have to buy 14 days worth of lunches and dinners, and I have to act as an ATM handing out hundreds of dollars in cash tips. Is this really a package, or is it just a heavily subsidized starter kit?
It's a fantastic question, and it forces us to examine the psychology of the modern traveler. Let's look at the unbundled dinners, for example. If you view this through the lens of a Caribbean all-inclusive resort, excluding dinners seems like a massive failure.
Right, because at a resort, everything is covered.
But Exotica isn't selling a resort. They're selling cultural exploration. For their target demographic, unbundling the food is actually a highly desirable feature.
How does making me buy my own dinner add value?
Think about the alternative. Traditional legacy coach tours often include all meals. What that actually means on the ground is that at 6 p.m., a group of 40 people is herded into a massive, sterile banquet hall.
Oh, I've seen those.
They are served a heavily diluted preset buffet that has been engineered to offend absolutely no one's palate. It is the culinary equivalent of elevator music. By stripping dinners out of the base price, Exotica forces the traveler out into the
Oh,
city.
yeah, I see.
It gives you the freedom to wander down an alleyway in Tokyo, find a tiny yakitori stall that only seats 6 people, and have a deeply authentic, memorable experience on your own budget. They handle the stressful logistics during the day, but give you back your autonomy at night.
Okay, I buy that. Autonomy over food is crucial. And what about the
Yeah.
tipping? Why not just roll it into the upfront price so I don't have to carry cash?
From a corporate accounting perspective, pre-collecting tips for thousands of independent contractors across 50 different international tax jurisdictions is a total nightmare.
Yeah.
Furthermore, in many developing economies, handing cash directly to the local guide ensures the money actually stays in the local economy rather than being absorbed by a corporate payroll system.
So it's better for the guide.
It's a logistical reality of global travel, yeah.
There's one more financial component we absolutely have to dissect because the guide dedicates a significant amount of space to it. It is an optional $99 add-on product called Flex Cancellation.
This is arguably one of the most intelligent financial instruments currently operating in the travel space. The premise is incredibly simple. You pay $99 per person at the time of booking.
Okay.
In exchange, you are granted the right to cancel your trip for absolutely any reason up to 30 days before departure, and you receive a 100% refund in the form of an Exotica travel credit.
And if I decline the $99 fee and my boss cancels my vacation time 2 months before the trip,
You are subjected to a brutal sliding scale penalty matrix. Depending on how close you are to the departure date, standard cancellation fees can wipe out up to 100% of the money you paid.
ouch.
Even if you purchase Flex, but you demand a cash refund to your credit card instead of travel voucher, they hit you with a 75% penalty.
When you lay the math out like that, it ceases to be an optional add-on. If you are sinking $5,000 into a dream safari, paying a $99 premium to protect that investment against a sudden illness, a family emergency, or a global event is the most rational insurance purchase you can make. It's an absolute necessity.
And look at it from Exotica's side of the table. It is a brilliant mechanism for corporate stability. First, it completely neutralizes consumer hesitation. Dropping $5,000 on a website is scary. Knowing you can back out for 99 bucks makes clicking buy much easier. Second, because the refund is locked into a travel credit, the money never actually leaves the Exotica ecosystem. If you cancel, they retain the capital. It's just deferred revenue. It guarantees customer retention even when life goes wrong.
It's a win-win disguised as an upsell. All right, we've mapped out the technology, we understand the hotel logistics, and we've audited the financials. Now I want to pull back and look at the actual map of the world.
Let's do it.
Where does this system actually shine, and who are they fighting against for market share?
Let's survey the battlefield. Exotica's current catalog is expansive. They're operating across 5 continents, covering more than 50 distinct destinations and offering over 430 different itineraries.
That's massive.
But as the source material astutely points out, this algorithm does not perform equally well everywhere. Some geographic regions are incredible value engines, while others are essentially saturated dead zones.
The guide highlights their absolute powerhouses, Africa and the Americas. Why do they dominate there?
Let's look at the numbers. They offer 12 different deeply layered itineraries for Egypt alone. They have massive programming for South African safaris and extensive routes through Morocco. Over in the Americas, Peru is actually the single most booked destination in their entire global portfolio, with 15 variations of the Machu Picchu Sacred Valley route. They also command a huge presence in Ecuador for Galapagos expeditions.
Asia is also a massive pillar for them. They run 74 different itineraries across the continent, heavily anchored by Japan and India. And when you look at that list, Egypt, Peru, India, Japan, a pattern immediately emerges. These are destinations characterized by incredibly high friction for the independent traveler.
Exactly. If you want to go to India, figuring out the domestic rail system, securing reliable internal flights, and finding vetted local drivers is a daunting, high-anxiety task for a Western tourist. Exotica's entire value proposition is removing that friction. They thrive in environments where the barrier to entry is high.
Which perfectly explains why their European catalog is fundamentally weaker. The guide notes that Europe actually has the highest number of itineraries, 99 packages, but the pricing advantage is negligible.
Because the friction doesn't exist. If an American wants to visit London, Paris, and Rome, they don't need a massive tech engine to orchestrate it. The train networks are flawless, English is ubiquitous, and the hotel supply is infinite. A traveler can easily piece that trip together themselves on an iPad in an hour. Because the supply chain isn't fragmented, Exotica's bulk buying algorithm can't generate that massive 30% margin of savings. The European market is simply too commoditized.
And then you have regions like Oceania, Australia, and New Zealand. It's a tiny catalog for them, and the prices are astronomical.
That is purely a reality of aviation physics. The flight from North America to Sydney is so incredibly long and expensive that the base cost of the airfare entirely consumes whatever margin the AI might save on the ground logistics.
So understanding where they win and where they struggle, who are they actually competing against? When a consumer is holding their credit card, deciding who to trust with their vacation, what are the alternatives?
The competitive landscape is clearly defined by four distinct archetypes. First, you have the legacy comparison. Gate 1 travel. Gate 1 operates in similar destinations at comparable price points, but they are built on a traditional operator model. They physically own more of their ground operations, but they are significantly less technology forward. If a traveler wants to conduct a seamless digital transaction, they use Exotica. If they want to call a 1-800 number and have a human walk them through a brochure, they use Gate 1.
Then you have the adventure sector, companies like G Adventures and Intrepid.
These are fascinating because they operate in the exact same high-friction destinations, Peru, Southeast Asia,
Huh.
but they target a vastly different psychological need. They skew younger, they focus heavily on ecotourism and rugged authenticity. But crucially, their base prices almost never include international flights. You have to solve the aviation puzzle yourself. They sell grit. Exotica sells affordable, frictionless convenience.
If we look upmarket, you run into the TTC group brands like Trafalgar or Insight Vacations.
These are the premium, fully escorted traditional coach tours. They are significantly more expensive, and they do include the dinners and the bells and whistles. But you are locked into a massive group of 40 to 50 people. Exotica actively disrupts them by offering a similar level of comfort, but in a much more intimate group of 12 to 15, appealing to people who hate the idea of being herded.
Finally, the guide mentions EF Go-Ahead Tours, which seems to be the most direct apples-to-apples competitor. They include flights, they have a strong digital presence, and they were founded with an educational focus.
When you map all these competitors out, Exotica's strategic positioning is brilliant. They are attacking the traditional multi-day tour market from below. They leverage SmartFare AI to secure cheaper airfare than the premium operators. They keep the group small to bypass the stigma of massive coach tours, and they offer a fully integrated booking process to eliminate the DIY headaches of the adventure brands. They have surgically carved out a niche that offers affordable luxury with zero logistical homework.
And yet, despite all this flawless algorithmic optimization and frictionless booking, there is a detail in the source material that I find incredibly revealing. Yvon Jr. Blanchette, the author of this massive, highly detailed guide we've been using, well, he's a travel advisor.
It is the ultimate paradox of this entire ecosystem.
Think about it. Exotica builds an AI that can evaluate 6.5 million flights a second, calculate layover risks, and optimize hotel routes. It is designed to replace the travel agent entirely. And yet, Yvonne's business model is thriving. He's still out there writing this guide, helping clients figure out if they should upgrade to the superior tier, or advising them on why flex cancellation is necessary. It proves that no matter how sophisticated the technology gets, it has not rendered the human element obsolete.
Because purchasing a bucket list vacation is an intensely emotional transaction. We are perfectly happy letting a machine do the complex calculus of airline pricing. But before we authorize a $6,000 charge on our credit card for a trip to a continent we've never visited, we want a human being to look us in the eye or talk to us on the phone and validate our choices. The algorithm removes the friction of the supply chain, but it cannot remove the emotional anxiety of the unknown. We still need a guide to navigate the system.
Which brings us perfectly to the end of our expedition today. Let's pull everything together for you, the listener. If you take away anything from our deep dive into the source material today, it should be this. Exotica is not just a travel company. It is a highly sophisticated deep tech data engine, cleverly disguised as a glossy travel brochure. They offer verifiable, substantial value, and they have successfully dismantled the logistical nightmare of multi-continent travel.
And this is the critical compromise that value requires surrender.
Exactly. You must be willing to relinquish your loyalty to a specific airline. You must accept that your hotel is just a category until a month before you leave. And you must be disciplined enough to understand that the initial price tag is a foundation. You still need to budget for the meals you will eat and the cash tips for the local humans who will actually make the trip memorable.
It is a remarkable case study in how digitization can transform an analog industry. But stepping back from the logistics and the pricing tiers, analyzing this company raises a much deeper, almost philosophical question about the nature of travel itself. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
I love a good lingering question. Lay it on us.
For centuries, the struggle of travel was considered an intrinsic part of the journey. The agonizing planning, the friction of negotiating foreign transit, getting utterly lost, the immense effort of piecing disparate elements together that struggle built anticipation. It demanded personal investment.
It sure did.
Today, we have engineered an environment where artificial intelligence can flawlessly optimize our deepest, most exotic travel dreams. A supercomputer matches us with local guides and routes us across oceans for the lowest mathematically possible price, all executed with a single click from our couch. But if the journey is entirely frictionless, from the moment of conception to the moment of arrival, does it change how we value the destination once we step off the plane? If an adventure requires absolutely no struggle to orchestrate, does it lose a fraction of its soul? Or conversely, does stripping away the paralyzing anxiety of logistics finally free our minds to truly simply just experience the world we are visiting?
Oh, that is a fantastic paradigm to chew on. Does the friction make the memory? It circles right back to where we started. If building the space shuttle in your garage with your own two hands was half the fun, simply buying a ticket to ride someone else's perfectly optimized rocket might feel a little different once you reach orbit. But then again, sometimes you really just want to get to the moon without getting grease all over your hands.
Very true.
Thank you so much for joining us on this dump dive into the hidden mechanics of modern travel. Keep asking those hard questions, keep looking for the invisible systems running behind the curtain, and keep diving deep into the things you are insanely curious about. Until next time.